Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In this one, I wanted to put together a deck that was mostly comprised of commons, uncommons, and rares. You'll see that there's just one mythic in it, but in general, I get a lot of really good feedback from you guys when I make one of these sorts of videos, and so I just made that Ulamog, defeating Ulamog with just commons. And so I was going through the cards that I had from M21, and I felt a really strong desire to try and make a video on a combination of Shipwreck Dowser, which is a card that most of you should have. It was a card that was given to all of us for free when M21 came out. And also Burl Fist Oak, which is one of the rares that was on my chase list. Now, Burl Fist Oak is a particularly strong card. It's a 10 mana 5/4 with trample, and when you draw a card, this creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So that got me thinking, all right, I need to build a deck around this thing that is going to draw a ton of cards. And if I wanted to use Shipwreck Dowser too, that means that I'd want to be taking advantage of the Prowess ability too. So Prowess says when the ability triggers when you cast a non-creature card. Now, fortunately for us, most of the card draw in this game, it comes from spells. We get some from supports, we can get some from creatures, but most of it comes from spells. And if we play those spells, it's going to go ahead and trigger Prowess. Which then got me thinking about two other cards, which are Teferi's Ageless Insight and Days Undoing. Both of these cards are going to make it so that you draw cards and you give those cards 3 mana. Which made me think, okay, well, what happens if we take a bunch of our just really low mana cost cards that cost 3 or less, put them in a deck, and they all draw us cards? And so the Teferi's Ageless Insight, when you draw the first card of your turn or another effect makes you draw a card, you draw another card. That other card gets 3 mana. And then it also has Prowess, so your first creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn whenever you play a non-creature card, which means that between Teferi's Ageless Insight triggering Prowess, the Shipwreck Dowser triggering Prowess, and the Burl Fist Oak getting the +2/+2 whenever you draw a card, you can actually make this deck get really, really large and make a really cool sort of loopy deck without even needing to have other essentials that you might think you would need to make a loop deck, like Song of Creation or Borrow or something like that. So the final piece to this puzzle before I get any further is Goblin Electromancer. So I originally started building this deck and I was putting in all these cards that cost 3 or less, and then it came to me to use this thing, because while this creature's on the battlefield, your spells cost 2 less to cast, which means that if we're going to be giving 3 mana to things from Days Undoing and Teferi's Ageless Insight, then that means that we can now play things that are up to 5 mana if we're using the Electromancer. Furthermore, the Shipwreck Dowser is going to bring us spells back from our graveyard and give them half mana, which means that if we fetch something that is, say, 3 or less mana, we're going to give it a mana and it's going to become 2 less mana, and voila, we'll be able to immediately play it. So that's going to make this loop a little bit more. The other spells that I chose to run were Animist's Awakening, because this can give us some potential gem conversion. And remember, with the Electromancer, we can cast it for 3. We've got Discovery in here so that this lets us surveil. Ideally, we can dump our creatures from our deck, throw them into the graveyard when we surveil. So we get to look at up to 2 cards, or we get to look at the top 4 cards and get rid of potentially 2 of those, right? Or if we need, it also gives us the opportunity to have removal. So this gives us a way of still having some removal in this deck, which is definitely handy. We've got Artificer's Epiphany, which is going to draw 1 card for 2 mana, or if you have a support in play, it draws 2 cards, which means that if we have the Electromancer down, this is just 0 mana. And if we don't have the Electromancer down and we draw it to Teferi's Ageless Insight or Days Undoing, we just cast it for free anyways. Then we've got Glimpse of Freedom, which is just 3 mana to draw a card, and then when it enters your graveyard, you can have it create graveyard gems. You can recast it. There are other things that you can use. There's actually a whole bunch of other things, but I just chose to use this one because I really like the art on it, honestly. That's what it came down to. There's a lot of options. I like this art. It's beautiful. The final card that I threw in is Flower. So I threw in Flower because it converts gems to green or white, which means there's a 50% chance that it's going to convert those gems to green. And the more things that are converting to green, the more likely it is that we're going to trigger these Animist's Awakenings. And the more likely we are to trigger these Animist's Awakenings, the more likely we are to get this whole thing to loop and get pretty nasty. So you'll see that I actually couldn't throw this into the standard training grounds. I had to throw this into the legacy training grounds. I had to see how would this deck perform against legacy decks, and I was quite surprised with the result. So let's go ahead and take a look. Alrighty, so we're here matched up against Legacy Elspeth. We've got Teferi's Ageless Insight in our starting hand, which is definitely a really good thing. I'm going to go ahead and freeze down the Animist's Awakening. I don't need it to cast if I play both Teferi's Ageless Insight and the Tree Folk. It's just, it wouldn't do anything, right? It would maybe convert a whole bunch of gems that I then wouldn't be able to use for mana. So Elspeth is running a Legacy token deck, which is definitely scary. Don't like the looks of that. I can go ahead and slot the Animist's Awakening up in my hand now. So just if I cast the Animist's Awakening, I can go ahead and bring it back with the Shipwreck Dowser. So that makes it a safe play to just give myself a whole bunch of mana. And here you'll see my first card drawn with Teferi's Ageless Insight is already a free card. So this deck is going to get a whole bunch of free cards, which is really nice. We definitely want to make sure that we get our creatures down, though, because our creatures coming down is ultimately what's going to enable us to start, ideally, a loop, right? So we definitely want to get a loop going, and we definitely want to get it going quickly because we're up against legacy cards, and legacy is scary. So drawing the Electromancer here is kind of a best case scenario. That means that with the Electromancer in hand, we've actually got access to all three of our creatures. And the Animist's Awakening popping and giving us matches there is extra sweet. So I'm going to go ahead, risk this for the biscuit a little bit. I'm going to disable the spells in my hand. Simply, I don't actually need to play them. I'm going to use Kiora's first just to drain mana from Elspeth. I don't want her to be able to play anything on her turn. I'm going to go ahead and take that 5 match right there. This lets me get my creatures down. I'm actually going to go ahead and freeze down the Burlfist Oak in my hand, just in case Elspeth has removal, right? Because if she has removal, she's going to target one of my rares, which means she's either going to be targeting the Burlfist Oak or she's going to be targeting the Shipwreck Dowser. So just having that extra Burlfist in my hand is going to let me play this a little bit safe. And so you'll already see how quickly these things are buffing up. And I'm not even like trying to make this go off this turn. So these things get beefy really fast. Getting a Days Undoing there is also really nice. It'll be good to charge up some mana into that thing, take away Elspeth's white matches, which is always a pretty big win in my books. And now, unless Elspeth does something terrible, Elspeth plays Hixis. We definitely don't like that. Our goal is to win this turn. And so we're looking at pretty much a near full health Elspeth, and not exactly the strongest play field down on my side. But nonetheless, I still think it's probably possible that we could try and pull off a win this turn. So we're going to take that 5 match. That gives us a little bit more flexibility with what we play. We're definitely going to get rid of the creatures here, so we're going to surveil those creatures away. We don't want to draw them. We'd rather draw all of our spells. So that's one of the really nice things about Discovery. We can use it to weed away the things that we don't need. We've got 2 Animist's Awakenings in hand, so we can definitely go ahead and play those. You'll see that the Shipwreck Dowser is actually buffing twice. It's buffing from itself first, and then it's buffing from Teferi's Ageless Insight second. And then whenever we draw a card, that's where you're seeing the Burlfist Oak buffing also. Now, the Electromancer is not buffing, but we really don't need the Electromancer to be getting swole. We just want the Electromancer there to make our spells cost less mana. So here, we're buffing even more. We're getting some matches, which is pretty sweet. Our creatures are starting to get pretty big, which is definitely scary for our opponent. We're getting basically free mana because of all of our goodness, which is nice. And so let's see, can we weed out any creatures? No, but we can definitely weed out Teferi's Ageless Insight and the Epiphany. So the Epiphany is a great card, don't get me wrong. I'd just rather have the gem conversion of Flower and the Animist's Awakening. So those are going to let us do a little bit more. And you'll see like this The real key, we're getting rid of the Days Undoing here. We definitely don't need those. We've already got everything started, so they're definitely not needed. But you'll see here that, I mean, look at how this is looping. These are all commons, uncommons, and rares that are doing this, right? This is not like any great shake of mythic masterpiece or some marvel like that. You can even do this without Days Undoing, by the way. You don't need Days Undoing. Days Undoing just definitely helps. But back on task. So we've got a whole bunch of spells that cost basically nothing. So we definitely want the Animist's Awakening first. We're going to go ahead and move Days Undoing up one just because, remember, it definitely helps. We don't quite have enough power to kill Elspeth right now on the battlefield. So we're looking at, what, 87, 91 damage on the battlefield. So we're really close. We're just not quite there yet. So we're not going to stop the loop. We're going to let this keep going. We want to make sure that we kill Elspeth this turn. I really don't want to find out what else is in that deck. So we've got Flower coming here after the Animist's Awakenings. That's just giving us more mana, more gem conversion. And the real key about that is that we do now have enough to take out Elspeth, right? So we should have enough power right here to take out Elspeth. So we're at 50. It's just constantly changing here, right? So we're at 107. Yeah. So Elspeth is definitely going to die here. We're going to go ahead. Days Undoing. Days Undoing is going to draw us a whole bunch of cards. We're going to get a whole bunch of mana for them. And then we're going to go ahead and give Elspeth the Wappy Wappies. So if you like this kind of thing, go ahead and let me know. I love putting these types of videos together for you. Trust me, I actually keep an eye out for these types of things. This was something of my own creation. I thought it would be fun to put this together and then share it with you all. I was kind of hoping you guys would like this. So thank you guys all so much for watching my videos. I really appreciate you. I know I don't have the camera on, but I don't have a dedicated room to record right now. So thank you as always, and I'll see you in the next one.